right. This is when I've done these in the past, this is usually a really interesting conversation because these folks up here have the pulse of what's going on in the local economy. So I think you're going to enjoy some of these comments. We're going to do some self introductions while I ask some questions so that they'll be able to introduce themselves. So, Ray, we're going to start with you. If you wouldn't mind kind of doing a little bit of an introduction of yourself.
Sure.
And then I'll shoot you some questions here.
Perfect. My name's Ray Montgomery. I work with City National Bank. Been in San Angelo since 1992. Moved out here to marry my wife. I have been here ever since. I would talk about my son, but I'd rather talk about my granddaughter, who's been here since December the 18th. Thank you, Michael. Yes, I know I'm old enough to be a great grandfather. I get that part of it, but I'm pretty happy about that little girl. We are located we're domiciled in Colorado City. We bought a bank up there that has been around since 1900. That took place in 2019. We moved to San Angelo and our location in 2020. And have since purchased another bank in Abilene and Knox City in August of last year.
And you're on a great growth curve.
So we've been very blessed.
So here's the first question, Ray. Based on the lending activities, deposit trends, and business conversations you're having daily, what are you seeing in terms of economic momentum in San Angelo?
San Angelo's always been, and we've heard all these things that are going on in our community, but like I say, I've only been here for 30 years. I've called it home since the day I got here. Number one, when things are going great in the national economy, San Angelo is doing good. When things are absolutely abysmal on the national front, things in San Angelo are going pretty good. And so I don't know if that has more to do with, I'm quoting Asher at this point in time. I saw the term oasis in the desert, and I kind of like that term or whatever else, but we've got our own little ecosystem out here for whatever reason. And obviously people on the national scale are finding us. Very, very, I'm trying to figure out, we have the comptroller here. We've got all of the data centers. I get it. You'd realize we're just fillers till lunch at this point in time, which is perfect. I mean, if we're going to set the bar pretty low for this group, but I think as a group, we always have been a little more optimistic than most, Steve. I still maintain that we're all a little taller and a little better looking after about, whatever we got, 6/10, 7/10 inch rain. We're still very dependent on that part of it. We've got a lot of local attractions with the river. General Hawkins here with ASU, with the regional center that we've got with medicine, Howard College, the partnerships that are going on out there, and just the economic climate that's helped foster via the Chamber of Commerce. So all of that part of it, I think, plays into what we're doing.
So here's a follow-up question. Are businesses optimistic and investing in growth, or are they taking a more cautious approach?
I'm going to go with cautiously optimistic. Can I couch that? And if I were leaning any direction, I would go with optimistic. We're in a very, in our world, in a much more better environment. We're a gentler, easier environment possibly than previous administration. OCC with what I guess these two are not. They're both state guys, but we've seen a little bit of relaxing at our regulatory level. That means it's a little bit easier for us to be able to take care of our folks out there. But I think with CFPB and all of that part of it, to go into a national scale, we don't see as much out there. So it gives us the opportunity to kind of take care of the folks that we need to take care of, Steve. So let me amend that. I'm just going to go with optimistic.
Okay.
How about that?
So what sectors are driving the activity, and where are you seeing the most opportunities?
Again, I probably defer to my friends at the Chamber of Commerce. Like I say, for 30 years, people ask me, where are these people coming from that buy houses, that do all of this part of it? And Drew's not here. Lori, you could probably answer the question. We have such a diverse economy. There are always opportunities out here for people that do things well. That people that plan, that have a vision, that do things. I would say as a whole, I think San Angelo does a very, very good job as far as trying to buy and stay local. And I think that's a huge part of it, because anything that we do, including these other three gentlemen on the stage, you can pick up your phone and you can do that via a bank in, what is it, Y'all Street or whatever, that deal about the deal about the Chase employees in Dallas, that blew my mind earlier from the comptroller. But I think that's one thing that we've always done pretty well, and people still like to be able to smell our bad breath and our cheap cologne. I mean, they want to be able to talk to somebody, to be able to interact with people, and I think that's the one thing that we've got. I didn't actually answer your question, Steve, but at the same time, I think just the local part of it, having someone to be able to talk with, is always a huge.
Absolutely.
Mm.
All right, Brandon, do a self introduction, and then I'll shoot you a question.
Check.
There you go. That's bad.
All right. So my name is Brandon Braden. I'm with Texas State Bank. I'm sitting in for Casey Barrett. Casey's a lot better at this than I am. Just to give you a little background of myself, I'm from Wall, Texas. Grew up there in the farming community. Went to Angelo State, stayed around, got into banking about 1991, and pretty much stuck with it. So moved over to Texas Bank in 1997 and have been there ever since. So I guess I'm finisher up.
You've been around the block a couple times.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I still am tied to the ag side, so it kind of worked out. Luke and I kind of talked about the questions and stuff. And
So this is an ag question
is
for
a
you.
good bet,
Okay.
yeah.
So agriculture remains a cornerstone of our regional economy, but faces some unique challenges and weather volatility and commodity prices that fluctuate with inputs of cost. And the generational transition as folks get older, their kids don't want to go into the ag business like their dad did or the grandfather did. What's your assessment of the health of the ag sector right now?
So as we look at it year after year, the ag sector is probably stable at best. If you just looked at the ag, the income side of what it takes to produce versus the expenses, there's no way it's going to work. So if we can go back to where we are right now. 2021 was probably the last time during snow that we had some really good rain. And so 22, 23, 24 crops were at best nothing. I mean, they had to rely on every bit of insurance that they had. The government stepped in. They actually made more money in 22, 23, and 24 than we've seen forever. So these guys right now are flush. They're really good. But 25 rolls around, we get a little bit of rain. It kind of tricks them into thinking in the spring, hey, let's pump, let's go, let's put it in there. And it dries up. Then July hits and gives it to us all at one time. So the funds and being flush have been great up until again. We're back in the drought. I mean, look at our lakes. You can see where our water tables are terrible. You worry about some of the data centers putting water out on these properties. Come out and see what an agricultural farm puts out on some land. It's their land, it's their water rights. But these guys are up against a lot more than everybody knows. I had one guy kind of spell out. We go over our projections, and I said, "Well, tell me what you actually did last year in the irrigated side and your dry land side." So we pencil it all out. He makes $28 a bale on irrigated. He loses money on the dry land side. So if you don't have the government assistance and the insurance, these guys, they're not going to work. They're never going to pencil out. I know Roger's over here too. He deals with them every day like I do. You guys all have a few of them in there, but it's tough. So I'm not candy coating anything, but it's tough.
So the follow-up question is then how are ranchers and farmers positioning themselves for long-term survivability?
They're going to DC and they're trying to figure out exactly what, this big, beautiful bill that's coming in supposed to be, is going to help. They just haven't given us a whole lot of parameters of what it's going to have in it to benefit. When you look at an agricultural setting, there's a lot of things happening back from 23, 24, 25 that they're playing catch up with. So it's sustainable in that fashion through the government side of it all. The insurance side is getting harder and harder and harder. And these agents that are around here are smart individuals, and they're there to guide these guys to make it that much better. And if they're not doing their job, it's gonna trickle down to basically us. Because if we don't have the insurance and the fallback position of the government assistance, these guys know it, they can't sustain. And then, you had mentioned about the longevity of these farms. So take a look at different generational stuff. So let's break it down. I may be too long here, but If you have a 100-acre farm and I inherit a 100-acre farm and I don't farm, what am I going to do with it? I'm going to ask somebody to farm it and get paid $60 an acre for a non-irrigated farm. So I'm going to get $6,000 on 100 acres for a year. Or what's happening is a lot of these developments are coming around some of these towns, and like Walls, big deal, 17,000 an acre. So I can take 1.7 million in one lump sum versus sitting there going, how's that going to work? So there's not an easy answer to that question for these guys. I mean, it's definitely going to have to come from more government assistance and so forth.
So obviously, when we had with the emerging energy opportunities for West Texas, they talked about policies having a huge impact. I guess you would say agriculture policies coming out of Washington are going to have impacts then.
Absolutely, yes.
Okay. Luke, introduce yourself. Congratulations, recently promoted, and excited that I know you've been here for a while, but excited about your new position. And tell us a little about yourself, and I'll ask you a question.
Thank you. Yeah, my name is Luke Urich. I'm originally from San Angelo, graduated from Central High School, and then went on to Lubbock to Texas Tech and worked for a bank there. Started when I was finishing up college and stayed there for several years, and then got a call from former president from San Angelo National, which is First Financial, to come back here. And me and my wife decided to make that move in 2008. Been here ever since, and just recently was promoted to market president here in San Angelo.
And congratulations. So here's your question. Looking ahead 3 to 5 years, what trends or developments do you believe will have the most significant impact on San Angelo's economy?
So obviously there's been a lot of discussion about the things that we have going on in front of us here locally. Ray alluded to it as well. I think San Angelo's economy has always been broad-based and insulated from a lot of the major upswings and downturns in that we see nationally. But I think we're in a period of meaningful economic growth and have a lot of opportunity in front of us. I don't know that everybody's had the opportunity, but if you haven't, I would encourage you to reach out to the city or the chamber. I think can probably provide it as well. But there's a updated housing study that was just completed this last year, just kind of giving some insight into a lot of things that are going on in the economy and some other challenges that we face here locally. In that report, it indicates that Tom Green County added about 5,800 jobs between 2020 and 2024. That averages out to just under 1,500 a year. And that momentum is expected to continue through 2030. Also in that report, it indicates that for every 2 jobs that are created, there needs to be an additional house added. So we've been behind that production. And, so I'd say the trends are very positive. We will benefit from the addition of some of the things that we've talked about coming to our community, and also continue to benefit from Goodfellow and Shannon and ASU and the manufacturing facilities that we have here locally, and that's continued to strengthen and expand. I think the biggest challenge is just the continued tightening of the housing market. And so that's something I think as a community we're going to have to figure out. And then predominantly the biggest impact is on first time home buyer starter type houses, and that kind of falls in a range between like 175 to 225,000, and those are extremely hard to come by. So I think that's something that I've been focused on.
So you mentioned, just in passing, we talked about agriculture, technology, military installation, healthcare growth, and tourism. Is there any one of those sectors that really kind of catches your attention and say, man, this is one that, next 5 years, I really think you're going to see some tremendous growth?
Well, obviously, I think the technology sector is something that would expand. That's what we've been talking about all morning. And so I think the long-term impact of that is somewhat unknown. The immediate impact of that is going to be pretty significant. So I think as a community, we got to be smart in how we invest and prepare for that and manage through that. Just thinking about the idea of what we say 3,000 to 4,000 people on site for several years doing construction. That's going that's going to have a major impact on a lot of things in our community.
Yeah, I suspect you guys are getting approached about a lot of RV parks if that happens.
We've had a few inquiries here locally. I think that's starting. I do know, our First Financial's headquarters is in Abilene, and obviously there's a big data center going in. It's in the process of being built right now, and you can see it, in everything in the community there in Abilene, the impact of it. But I think we probably look at an RV park deal. I sit on our senior loan committee, which looks at deals from all over the state, and we probably see one of those. We meet Monday, Wednesday, Friday. I think we have one every meeting that somebody's trying to put in. So I think there's obviously a huge opportunity there, but we've also got to be smart about
Absolutely.
how we go about that.
All right, Ray, small business and startups are vital to any economic activity happening in a community. What are you seeing in terms of the entrepreneurial activity in San Angelo? And are people starting businesses, or are you seeing less people starting businesses? And what sectors do they seem to be starting businesses?
Yeah, I don't know that I see a trend where there's a significantly amount or a larger amount that are beginning now. I do see the folks that are kind of doing the side hustles in that part of it to kind of go in, we're sticking a toe in first as opposed to jumping in head first, which is not the worst thing in the world on that part of it, to kind of have yourself a little bit of a hedge on that part of it. To Luke's point, I was sitting here thinking one of the gentlemen that spoke with the data centers, electricians. We visited with the president of ACU. If you want a really good job right now, they are hiring electricians up there because all of them are out there at Lancium. And so that's some of the things that we're looking forward to. And so if I'm thinking of someone that's got, that wants to go out and do some things with that part of it. Obviously, technology is a big part of it, but still, you got to have hands and feet to make things happen too. I mean, certainly with home building and all of that portion of it. If I had to do it all over again, I might go into a trade, Steve. I mean, I've not done great at this, and maybe I'd do better at that part of it. I don't know, but but there's something about the hands-on part of it in my mind, just to see something that gets done as well too, just from a self-worth part of it there, to kind of say, hey, all these projects that we've got going, some of them get across the finish line, and I'm thinking I'm running out of runway at this point in time to see all of these things across.
So what distinguishes between a successful entrepreneur and one that struggles? I know you got, I know all three of you probably work with a lot of different entrepreneurs. What catches your attention?
I think you've got to have a passion for it. One, I'm looking at Trey over here. I'm not sure why, but he was giving me a hard time before he came up on stage, so I'll just call him out. Number two, the fact that you've got to be prepared. I mean, there's the passion, the preparedness, and then the pursuit. I mean, you got to stay after it too. I mean, one of the things that I've been blessed with in my life is I'm not very smart. I mean, so I see something I want, nobody can kind of deter me from that part of it, and I see that in a lot of folks that we do business with. Yes, I'm calling some of my clients not that bright, but again, they're dealing with me. That kind of goes without saying for the most part. But I think you find something that you like, you find something you enjoy. The whole deal about never going to work a day in your life because you enjoy it, and that's what brings me back to what the three of us do up here for a living. I mean, faith, family, finance, the things that we do, it's a big deal for us. I mean, in being able to be part of it in a community that supports us, they've got I would say the moral fiber, the tenacity. I've heard that about San Angelo. I mean, we're passionate about what we do, and we're very, very fortunate to be in this community.
So what's the characteristic or the struggle that you see a lot of entrepreneurs and startups deal with?
You'll probably burnout. I mean, I would guess on the front end, what we do is, I guess we can liken it to a star sprinter right here from ASU. I could call him Ronnie Hawkins. I think Ronnie was really good in the sprints, but he wasn't real good in the mile, and probably didn't want to run the decathlon either, would be my guess. Okay, so I've got, well, Ronnie in business is not that. Ronnie in business is a decathlete. I mean, you have to be able to pace yourself. You got to have a great support staff. I've been blessed with a family life that my wife supported me for 30 years. You've got a church community that supports you with what you do, and then you've got your community at the office too, Steve. And again, all of us that are in this room, obviously, we're blessed to have folks around us in the office right now, because guess what? None of us are in the office right now. So I think all of that plays a huge part in it.
Good. Brandon, commercial real estate and residential real estate are always a challenge, and I know Luke touched on the housing stock that we have, and Real estate's a lot of times a leading indicator in a local economy. What story is real estate telling us about San Angelo right now?
Well, he did hit on it. You know, we always describe San Angelo as the bubble. I've always said that with agriculture because it's the same thing. These guys have always done very well, but never have fallen off. You know, kind of in 2008 when we had the housing crunch, we stayed in that bubble and everything continued to be just fine. I would call it, and our growth is stable as it always has been. So when you look back, what I kind of always go back to is the first time I bought a house, and it was in 2005, my first real house. I think we paid $100 a square foot for it, and it was on some acreage and stuff. And that's kind of where the costs were, you know, for forever. And then now, as you look at it, 2026, you're going to spend $250 a square foot. Okay, well, there's a whole generation in there that were so used to these rates of 3.25 and even less in the mortgage world. And then once that left us, which was about 12 years, they lost their minds. Like, well, what am I going to do? We can't afford this. Well, these rates really aren't that bad. Mortgage rates really aren't that bad. But the problem is you've locked in a rate. I've locked in a rate, 2%, 2.5%. Well, yeah, I could sell my property and make some money on it. But what am I going to get? The same piece of property with a higher interest rate. So that's kind of slowed, I think, some of it down. But the first time home buyer guys, you know, I've got kids that are that age, they're 29, 30 years old, and try to find a house that you can really get into to begin with is not an easy deal either. So I think we have the sustainability. I think we have the building out there, but it's a different world from.
So do you think San Angelo has an advantage for the first-time home buyer or a disadvantage?
I don't say it's a disadvantage. I think it's tough. The cost of building a home now is just unbelievable. These guys are coming out of college and they're making, you know, mine all moved back to San Angelo. So they've got good jobs, but they're not making a ton of money to where they could get that and, you know, try to survive. They're having babies and everything else. So yeah, you had mentioned, I think Luke had mentioned first time home buyers buying a $150,000 home find that house.
Yeah.
Tell me what it looks like when you find it. And then don't tell me that you got to put $100,000 in it just to get it to where you feel nice about it. I mean, it is tough, I think, but the question basically says, is there enough houses being built? Yes. Is there a bunch on the market right now? Yes. There's a lot more on the market now than there was back in 23 when people had cash waiting, you know, they were sitting on it, waiting to just pull the trigger, and you had to fight to buy a house with cash if that's how you wanted to play. But it's changed since then, obviously. I think we've got the housing there, but may not answer your question, just information out there.
What type of real estate projects gets you the most excited?
Well, now that I sat here with this energy, I want a piece of that. I mean, I'd like to be able to finance some of that, but you know, I don't know. We do a variety of stuff. I'm mostly ag, but as I watch the other loan officers in the bank, I mean, we've got some really large projects of self-storage that are pretty amazing. It's not just your general self-storage anymore that are kind of exciting for us to see something different. But, you know, there's not a whole lot of exciting things, I guess, to finance. So we're here to help.
All right, Luke, San Angelo has seen significant investments in infrastructure, healthcare expansion with Shannon, quality of life improvements in the recent years. As a banker watching the capital flow into this community, do you believe our infrastructure, both physical infrastructure like roads and utilities and community infrastructure like housing and healthcare is keeping pace with their economic opportunities?
So I would say that our community has made some major progress in infrastructure in the last couple of years. But, you know, as we've been discussing, I think our economic momentum is going to continue to put pressure on that. And just talking about infrastructure generally, you know, I think immediately you think of roads and water. But I think that also, you know, translates to housing, healthcare, education, land use. And so, you know, the other thing I think to think about that is an additional challenge in San Angelo is really that we don't have a blank canvas. We got a lot of rivers and creeks that run through our community and shape how and where we can build. You know, that involves crossing structures, dealing with floodplains, topography challenges and that sort of thing. So, that puts some constraints on the availability of where you can put a subdivision. And so, I think as far as community infrastructure, we've been talking about housing. Brandon's probably more optimistic than I am about that. I do think there's a shortage, especially in that price range, for really your workforce and your first time home buyer type of housing. Um, I'm excited. I think it's important for everybody to understand how important having a strong education or educational availability is to attracting work for additional workers to our community. So very excited, and so I think it's very promising that we were able to pass the bond to upgrade the SASD facility. I think it was long overdue. And then the other thing I'll just touch on too, kind of along the same lines, is that policy is very important. I've been able to sit on the planning commission for several years and just rolled off of that in January. But excited to see some of the things that are underway there. In the process of reviewing the comprehensive plan, which is important to do, to look at the way that things are developing throughout the community and the way that we would like for them to continue to develop. And then there's also a committee that's reviewing subdivision ordinances right now, and looking at ways to make some additional developments, especially in that price range, more feasible, like reduce lot sizes, just some relaxed ordinances compared to what we've had in the past.
Right downtown. I always say, and Andy Marquis is here. She's chair of the downtown San Angelo. I always call the downtown the living room of a community. So downtown revitalization, you've seen a lot of renewed energy with new businesses and residential conversions happening, events and investment. As a lender, you are often asked to help finance some of these projects. So what's driving the momentum, and is it sustainable?
I'd like to think it is sustainable because folks that want to be downtown are that's their desire. We've had a couple of projects recently that going in, and of course, to both these guys' point, there's you don't buy it, it's not move-in ready at that point. I mean, everything's got renovation involved with it, so the numbers have got to work. So you've got to again, with the preparation. You don't make money on the 18th green, you make money on the first tee box. I mean, you got to look to see what I can lease this for at the end of it, once whatever those dollars go in there. I think with what we've done as a city, with the reinvestment that we've done downtown, I mean, I think it's vital to what's going on. I mean, again, spend a little bit of time in Abilene. Yes, no, Tommy, I much prefer San Angelo. I'm not moving to Abilene, but you see what they've done down there, and I think we've done a great job as far as emulating that part of it here. And I think that there's still some growth pent up down there that will be forthcoming.
Are there particular projects that you'd be interested in financing?
Oh, absolutely. No, we've done a couple of most of it involves real estate with that portion of it. They've repurposed buildings downtown. One of it is a retail space. The other is a food and beverage, I guess. Can I say that rather than a bar?
Yeah.
Okay, I'm just making sure. All right. But you see that part of it there, and I hear on Saturday nights it's a happening place down there. There's not that much going on when I go home at 6:30, but anyway, I guess it kind of picks up later on. But again, both of these appear to be very viable, and the numbers kind of speak for themselves. And so we're just fortunate that we were standing there when these folks wanted a partner involved with it.
Daniel will appreciate this question because everybody has an opinion about downtown. What do you think would drive additional development downtown?
Well, he's the outgoing guy, the manager, right? I mean, maybe I need to hand it to Daniel because he could say what he wants to at this point in time because but what would you say? All right, all right, all right. Well, there's got to be a draw for it, obviously. I mean, and we've talked about this as a group, as a town. Is San Angelo ever going to be the San Antonio Riverwalk? And the answer to that's probably no. But we do have a natural resource down there that kind of keeps being moved into some of the venues involved with it. But at the same time, I don't know that anybody's going to get in their car and drive to San Angelo for that river. I mean, where you do that in San Antonio, I don't know how to bridge that gap there. Again,
So,
I'm in the bank.
so we're saying the river may be a huge asset.
Yeah, I'm not very smart. I mean, so anyway,
Right. Good.
that's just my 2 cents.
Okay. Brandon, deposit trends in community wealth. Beyond lending and deposit trends tell us an important story about the community and the wealth and business profitability and consumer confidences. Are businesses and individuals maintaining healthy cash reserves, or are economic pressures forcing them to draw that down?
No, according to ours, we feel like they're keeping quite a bit more on reserve, and a lot of that's due to the inventory it takes to maintain the operating cost. And so now I feel like that a lot of ours have bigger accounts than they normally have had in the past few years, and a lot of that stems from after COVID. I think a lot of people sat on money, and then when it was time to start purchasing, I know you were going to talking about some deposits, but we're kind of going on another route. But that's how they were keeping a lot of those cash reserves on hand, just kind of in the waiting. But what we've done from the bank side through FDIC is we've been trying to up these FDIC limits, because a lot of people are keeping more cash reserves on hand just because the cost is.
So do you think there's cash sitting on the sideline right now in the account?
I do.
And what do you
We
think?
say it.
What do you think would draw that back into someone putting into deals, or
These rates going back down.
Okay.
We battled for these. We're in the battle for deposits right now, but as they're starting to come down, as rates have come back down a little bit too, I think that you'll start seeing people start to invest a little bit more money in different areas.
Okay.
So
All right, Luke. Obviously, we talked about agriculture with some folks, the older generation wanting to retire and move on, and the younger generations not wanting to do it. But obviously, you see that also in business. So we got many successful San Angelo businesses owned by baby boomers that are approaching retirement and creating a wave of potential business transactions. Are you seeing well-planned transition plans for the next generation, or are you seeing folks saying, I'm going to sell. This is my retirement. I'm going to sell, and the kiddos, you're on your own?
I don't think there's one significant trend there. I think it's just a kind of across the board, depending on, how thoughtful the business owner has been about that. And that's something that doesn't happen just one day you wake up and decide you're going to hang it up and go sell your business. And if that is the way that it happens, I'll say that's a poorly executed plan. It's not a plan. So I think what I would say for well-planned transitions is that the discussion starts early. There's thoughtfulness in building a team around a management team that can step in and run the company, a thought process of how that transition is going to take place, whether it's moving on to, following generation, or if it's an ESOP. There's just a lot of ways to do that. I'll say it's something that as a bank, we've given a lot of thought to and try to think through that entire process and build out the infrastructure within what we do to be able to serve a business owner from the beginning to the end, as far as planning for successful retirement, offering 401k plans to help take care and retain key employees. Also, obviously, the financing piece of it is a big part, from startup to private equity recaps and middle market type lending. And
So, a lot of communities struggle with they've had and we've all seen this, family-run businesses, names well known in the community, and then they sell to a regional or a national firm, and all of a sudden that local connection goes away. And there's concerns about that as generations get older and the transition happens. Is there anything that a community can do to help kind of maintain that local investment control opportunity?
well, I think it's critically important to the community to try to do everything you can to retain that business here. And I think that just from the perspective of the bank, that's something that we really try to focus on too, to be able to provide all of those services throughout the way to help to advise, those business owners that there is the option, or there are a number of options to be able to maintain local control and not necessarily having to get gobbled up by, a big corporation that's located elsewhere. And ultimately, what you're going to see is that they're squeezed down to, minimal employees and close of facilities and movement of that business to somewhere else. And so I'd like to do everything I can from a community standpoint to try to maintain that, as well as help, foster the success of a locally grown business. And it's obviously also beneficial to the bank.
Real quick, we're standing between you guys and lunch, so we're going to do this a real quick round robin. Technology is having a huge impact on the financial institutions, and you're seeing it growing more and more. What do you see? What do you see happening with your bank? And Brandon, we're going to start with you in terms of technology and what you're having to do to compete and keep up with it. Obviously, AI is playing some roles in some of this.
Right. So, staying up with all the banking technology is an every day, every week deal. But I feel like what we are more concerned with is the fraud side that we deal with. And I think businesses deal with them, but we are every day dealing with case after case or story after story of people just simply losing their money in its old school ways. I mean, they get talked into walking down to the bank, taking out 100 grand, going shoving it in a Bitcoin machine, give up the whatever they get, and walk out. So fraud is a huge deal for us, I think, and I'm sure these guys do the same thing.
Yeah, I know Luke and you and I had a conversation around that same thing. Do you see that as one of the major issues that you're facing?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think industry wide, for several years now, fraud losses have far exceeded credit losses, which is kind of a crazy thing to think about. But it's amazing to see some of the things that people get convinced to do, and they are adamant that it's not a scam, it's not a fraud, and we try to do everything we can to convince them, not to do some of these things. And we're also constantly implementing, updating technology to try to detect those things and get in front of them. But unfortunately, the bad guys spend all day, every day, 24/7 thinking of other ways to work around that. And so that's something that I think we'll continue to see technology come along and trying to help the banks to detect and prevent that.
Ray, you want to make a final comment on how you kind of protect, obviously AI, it's getting a lot more sophisticated.
It is.
And the challenge for, is trying to stay ahead of the criminals.
The whole deal, we tried to legislate at the OCC and TDB, I guess, too, with our oversight, the KYC part, know your customer. But you can't really legislate that part of it. You either do or you don't. But you see these things, you see these transactions. We had a case of elder abuse at one of our locations in Knox City this last week. And the fact was, on that part of it, is that somebody finds someone, we're a trusting, where we live, we'd like to take you at your word. And these people, these outside menaces, the outside threats, they know that part about it. And then you get to the folks that get on that part of it. And I know Brandon's situation with what transpired on that. This lady knew what was going on, yet was willing to sign something to the fact to say, I'm not holding the bank personally responsible for it. You get to a point, because there's a 3-letter word that there's a huge deal for a 60-year-old man, and that starts with an E and ends with an O. And you see this part of here because you don't want to ever admit that you're wrong. But unless we kind of get it together as a group and get it educated out there. And again, the anomalies that the AI spots, and that with what we've got with technology, that helps. But then we've just got to have those conversations. Those conversations are not always easy. I mean, when you're looking at a good depositor or whatever else, and you're looking at damaging a relationship, I'd rather be your friend than your banker at the end of the day, because on something like that, I'm trying everything we can to not let that happen to you. But again, it's going to take all of us to do that part of it. We're all going to have to be very much on guard, and unfortunately, that's the world we live in.
Well, gentlemen, thank you so much. Give them a round of applause. Fantastic job.